What's up, Restoration Nation? Rico Garcia here, and I'm really excited for this episode. I think this is going to be tons of fun. Today we are joined by Jeremy Reets, and if that name, maybe you're not too familiar with it, or maybe it rings a bell, maybe Reets Drying Academy. There you go. That's the individual that we've got going on today. Jeremy from Reets Drying Academy, such an amazing individual. We had a tremendous amount of fun on this podcast, tons of great information that I think anybody who's listening is going to be able to take something actionable away from this podcast. A little bit of background on Jeremy. So obviously he started with a family-owned business back in the 70s, 1970 to be exact, and did their first restoration project back in 1988, which is insane because that's like almost a lifetime ago. And then started Reets Drying Academy back in 2005. And they have tons of different programs, tons of different courses that they do. And they have courses each and every single week. And then on top of that, they also have an annual event, which hopefully is going to be back this year in August, between August 10th through the 12th in Georgia, which again, I will leave a link in the video description below, as well as in the show notes. So you can go ahead and check that out and check out Reets Drying Academy as well. But we cover a lot of material, everything from, obviously the basics on how to dry, but more importantly, like how to actually formulate and document things. And also the importance of making this material fun, which I think nobody's really done as well as Jeremy when it comes down to taking something that some would consider to be boring as, the drying aspects of things, but then tying that into your business, like how being a good quality tech, how that can go ahead and reflect on your overall bottom line. So overall, this was an amazing podcast, and I genuinely think that you're going to enjoy. Before we dive into the podcast, just a quick couple of public service announcements. Restoration Domination has got something really exciting cooking up for the next couple of weeks, or over the course of the next couple of weeks, I should say, one of which is going to be the legal corner and the public adjusting corner. Yes. So normally we have 4 episodes that are being dropped every single month, right? Once a week. However, we're going to have a total of 2 additional bonus episodes every month. One is going to be consisting of the legal corner, and the other is going to be consistent of the public adjusting corner. And what we're going to be doing is bringing in pros, both an attorney as well as a public adjuster, to talk about new changes on the legal front, talk about successes, the failures, some of the things that are coming down that could potentially affect some of your AOB or your work authorization stuff. And on the public adjusting side, we're going to be talking about case studies. We're going to be talking about, the good files, the bad files, things that are happening in policy, some of the roadblocks that public adjusters as well as attorneys are facing. And all of this is in an effort to go ahead and bring you some consistent information about how to not only use public adjusters and potentially even attorneys, if need be, the right way, but then also maybe fill in some of the gaps on the documentation side and fill in perhaps some of the gaps on what you just don't know yet, right? But again, there's so many changes that are happening in the industry that it's very difficult to go ahead and keep track of every single thing that's happening, especially on the legal front. All of this stuff changes so quickly, and ultimately it affects all of us in the restoration industry. So I think that this is going to be tons of fun, and we will be providing you with some additional information as we move forward. Before we dive in though to the podcast, I want to give a big shout out to our show sponsors, C&R Magazine. If you haven't gotten your subscription yet, head on over to cnrmagazine.com, hit the big red subscribe button, and get your magazine. Get it. I don't know what you're waiting for, right? Outside of that, I want to give a big shout out to Company Camp, but as per usual, we will go ahead and thank them somewhere in the middle of the interview. Meanwhile, let's go ahead, dive in, enjoy the show. Let's go.
Owning any type of restoration business is demanding of your time, your energy, and resources. And that's why we're here. This is Restoration Domination. If you're a contractor in water mitigation, mold remediation, biohazard cleanup, roofers, or public adjusters, you'll learn how to dominate using some of the techniques and strategies that our guests will share. We'll interview top industry insiders, movers and shakers, hustlers and hackers, and anyone dominating their industry. This is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, and dominate. And here's your host, Rico Garcia.
All right, guys, what is up? Jeremy, thank you so much for jumping on the call today and, helping us and sharing all of your knowledge. Are you ready to help us dominate?
I am. I was kind of wondering, am I a mover? Am I a shaker? I felt like it wasn't the right time to do any kind of dancing, even though I'm actually really, really good. I thought I I don't know what category I fit into, but
all of the above for sure. So do me a favor, man, which by the way, if you would have done a little dance, I probably would have pulled that out and it would have made it into the B-roll from here on out, by the way, just so you missed the shot. You missed the shot there. So do me a favor, man, fill in some of the gaps on the intro. Tell everybody who you are, what you do, and how you got into the business.
Yeah, so I got started in water restoration, did my first job December 24th, 1988. I know it's crazy that I remember that, but it was Christmas Eve. Everybody was working. We had a big freeze. I was 14 years old. It was awesome. I loved it. It was a duplex, two-story apartment, and yeah, that's where I got my start. My parents started the company, though, earlier than that, obviously. 1970 is when our family restoration business started. Of course, it wasn't restoration business at that time. It was a cleaning business because there was no such thing as restoration in 1970. But I started on the truck full-time in 1990, and I've been working in this industry ever since. In 2005, I started the Reets Drying Academy. We started doing online training in 2011, and I just was teaching a class about 5 minutes before we started recording this. So that's kind of up in a nutshell what has happened over the last 32 years.
That's amazing. So let's talk about the beginning of Reets Drying Academy, because obviously from doing restoration to starting an academy and, teaching people, I mean, that's a stretch even, in and of itself. I mean, sure, it's in the same, business, but very, very different skill set, right? So what got you motivated to start the Drying Academy?
Well, probably more of a nerd than I should be. I really enjoyed doing research on drying, and it was a special time in our industry. If you go back to the 90s, late 90s, and I know I'm not trying to go too far back here, there wasn't a lot going on in our industry. 1994, we got the LGRs for the first time, right? That was when they came out. In 2000, we were starting the ASD courses and hands-on training. Well, that's really maybe 98, 99, somewhere in that neighborhood. But it was pretty new, and a lot was changing. And so I started doing research on drying myself, and I found a lot of stuff that was really interesting. I learned about vapor pressure differentials. I developed from that a formula for determining evaporation potential, which really became the basis for what we in the industry use today as vapor pressure differentials. That's what it is. And so it's being used as it should be in drying today. But, it took a lot to move the industry from where we were to add in these new things and new equipment. I developed the e-test and test drying equipment. A lot to be taught, and I wanted to give it a shot. So found out that I was pretty good at teaching and loved it. So one thing led to another, and here we are. Today we'll probably the largest, if not the largest, really close to the largest water restoration training organization in the business.
That's amazing. So basically you were just geeking out on the drying process, and you're like, hey, you know what? I could probably teach this stuff.
Rico, if you could see what nonsense I was up to back in those days. I mean, I had this idea that if I could prove something on a small scale as we were trying new things, then all I had to do is scale it up to make it something that we dry a building with. So I had a workbench at the office, and I would go out and set things up and just continually monitor that all day. And I spent so much time, I wasted a lot of time,
right,
frustrating myself. But ultimately, ended up, from what I was learning here and what I was learning through research, discovered what we were really looking for, and that's the value of energy and drying and how to harness that and use it.
Now, here's the big question, right? Like, why? The big question is why were you tinkering to begin with, right? I mean, were you always like that way as a kid, or did you say, hey, if I can figure this out, I can package it and monetize it? I mean, it doesn't sound like that was the reason. So what was like the driving force behind you saying, hey, you know what? I really want to know how this works.
Yeah, that's a great question because I'm still trying to figure that out. But, I have a lot of energy. I'm probably a little bit of a workaholic, and I don't sit down, I don't watch TV. That's just not me. So I just wanted to spend some of that time working on something new because I was afraid of getting bored. And, by the time I got into that in 2002, I'd already been doing water restoration for about 12 years, which isn't a long time, but it kept it fresh, and it still does. And that's why I like doing the training, really, I love seeing a new group of students every week, spending time, and like some of the guys that we were in there with this week. The opportunity to take somebody who has an exciting dream to work on. They want their own business, or they're working for a company and they just want to get better at what they do. Seeing those individuals, I see a lot of myself in that. There's a lot of excitement there. And it was, I think, probably a lot of it was, let me see what I can build, what I can do, and can I have some influence on the industry I work in and that I really enjoy. And so fortunately, it worked out pretty well.
Right. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the industries from the time that you started to modern day? I mean, obviously you already spoke about quite a few, right? Like there was a big jump in what the industry is today, but what other changes have you seen that, number one, that should have been adopted, right, that are currently in use? And what things maybe have you noticed that people are doing that should have never become, quote unquote, a common practice?
Well, I think that if you go back to 1988, when I did the first water damage we had big vacuums, right? We had these truck-mounted vacuums, and that really hasn't changed much. That's what got the cleaning industry into water restoration. But other than that, we had some air movers. We had a carpet probe, moisture sensor. That was it. Even the dehumidifiers, Dry's was starting to produce some dehumidifiers at that time, but not a lot. So we were using little 40-pint dehumidifiers that you could buy at Sears or Kmart or whatever in 1988, places you bought stuff like that. To think that that's what we were doing with no meters, no hygrometer. I remember the first hygrometer I got that from Sonny Bass. He handed me this hygrometer and said, "Hey, you can have that hygrometer." And I was like, well, what do you do with this? I mean, that's where we were back in the early 90s. And today, it's amazing how much we understand. This industry is still in its infancy as far as industries go. You think about plumbing. I mean, that's been going on for many decades. Electrical, same thing. Much bigger industries. This is a small industry and a young industry still, and it's continuing to develop. So what do I think? You asked a second part to that question. What do I think maybe we're doing that we shouldn't be doing? I think one of the things that has come into our industry, and I have different theories as to why this is, but is unsafe work practices. I don't see safety prevalent. Safe work practices prevalent in our industry. Why? I don't know. I think it's because a lot of the companies that are running today came from a cleaning company or came from a general contractor, and we just run and gun, get it done, right? And we're just now beginning to realize that there's a lot of dangers in what we do. Do we wear PPE? Yes, we understand, wear the suit, wear the respirator, but there's a lot of other concerns within our industry that we have to be careful about. So I do see an interest in safety today, but it really should have taken place a lot earlier.
What kind of safety in particular should, business owners be looking at, right? Or something that's commonly overlooked that they should start paying a little bit more attention to?
Well, I'll give you an example. I would go back to when we were doing Category 3 water losses back in the 90s. We didn't know that you were supposed to wear respirators or suits. The rule was you just don't talk on a sewer damage, so you don't get splashed in the face, or if you do, then go in your mouth. That was our PPE. Right. And slowly we got to where it's like, okay, well, now we need to wear a respirator because they told us in class, or now we have to wear a suit because that's what they've told us in class. But are guys wearing safety glasses on a regular basis? I mean, we're tearing out drywall, we're using saws, we're using knives, we've got splash hazards. Are guys wearing safety glasses? No. What about hearing protection? Is that common? No. Is a lot of the stuff that we're working with noisy? Absolutely. Are we wearing gloves? Well, if we're on a sewer damage, yeah. If we're working in just in a demo environment, maybe. But as a regular practice, The problem is there's not a lot of standards, and there has been no training specific to restoration when it comes to safety. So a lot of the problem is you're not aware of the hazards, and you're not aware of the solutions that or the practices that you should be involved in that make what you do safe. We've had to rely on other industries, the construction industry, and so much of it doesn't apply. You go to a safety class and they're telling you about how to be safe during trenching. It doesn't apply, right? And so now you as a restoration professional have a very hard time applying that to the work that you do every day. That, I believe, is the big issue. Is there one specific hazard? I don't know that there's one specific hazard. It's just a general attitude and understanding regarding safety that's lacking.
Right. So kind of moving forward from there, let's talk about the drying process. And, there's some really amazing companies, really amazing technicians, but just like anything else in the world, there's also the complete polar opposite of that. There are the people that, never taking any training, they're in a state that doesn't require any licensing or anything like that. And there's always this debate about being a really, really good drying technician or mold remediator, and then how much that actually moves the needle. Something that I've mentioned a lot on the podcast is it doesn't necessarily move the financial needle. But then again, I'm also operating from a place where I believe that if anybody is doing a dry out, you would want to take the time to get the certifications, really understand the process, and produce a really, really good end result, right? That should be kind of unsaid. But where's the marriage, right? Like, where's the crossroad? How is it that being a really good expert in your field can move the financial needle? Like, where is that tied? Because in my opinion, there's a massive disconnect is no one makes it sexy. Like, no one talks about, it's either you're on the money-making camp or you're geeking out on, vapor pressure. It's like one of the two, right? So, but somewhere in the middle, there should be this crossroads where it's like, hey, the better you get at this skill set, the more that you understand it, the more, that this can financially move the needle for you. So what are your opinions on that? And, what advice would you give to someone who says, I don't really need to know everything that this industry has to offer?
I don't know how much time you have, but you're exactly right. It's like, this is the drum that we pound every day. This is so important because I hear guys say, why would I come to class? I have to get certification because it's required to work in the state? No, it doesn't have anything to do with any of that. But I'll just take one example. Do you know how many air movers to place per the S500 standard? Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, yeah, or I have some software. We put it in there and it tells us, I don't care whether you have software or not. Is the software correct? That's a question you should ask yourself, because historically, and I'll probably get slayed for this, but historically, the software is not accurate when it comes to air mover placement, and it's not accurate and it's not in your favor. So in other words, it's telling you to put fewer air movers than you really are supposed to use. Well, how could that play out? Well, let's say that you do 100 water damage projects a year, and we're just going to talk about just air movers for 1 second. You do 100 projects a year. It's not a big company, but there you go, 2 a week. On each of those jobs, you miss one air mover. And let's just, for easy math, call this air mover a $30 a day rental for easy math. You're averaging 5 days of drying. So one air mover times five, at $30 a day times 5 days is $150. Not really a big loss, right? Not a big loss for $150. Well, let's take that out over a year. Times 100, that's $15,000. Now, that's not a huge amount of money. But we just talked about one thing. You've got the air movers on your truck. You should be using them. And if you're missing on one air mover, I bet you're not missing just one air mover on those jobs if you're not calculating it. You're probably missing 2 or 3 or 4 on average. And so now we're talking about just even in a small company, $15,000, $30,000, $45,000, $60,000, and how much profit is there in just that one air mover? Well, you're being paid to place it. You've got the equipment already. It's near 100% profit.
Right.
And so here, while we're trying to beat the streets to find another job and spending a tremendous amount of money to find more work, we get the job and then we don't process it correctly. Well, we could move it on to air filtration devices. Why do you use air filtration devices? What value do they provide to the property owner? When should you use those? What does the standard say about using air filtration devices on Category 1 losses? How do we use air filtration devices on Category 2 and Category 3 losses? Now, that's not, is there a technical background to that? Absolutely. But these are dollars and cents, and we don't even count the cents. These are a lot of big dollars that we're talking about. And not only are we talking about big dollars, but let's say that you have people in a home that have allergies, or they have children, one of them or both of them or whatever have asthma, right? And you don't address that, and now you turn on your air movers. We show you in class. I just did it this afternoon. We take a particle counter and we show you how what you are doing in that project affects the air quality. It's terrible. And so, what are you doing to mitigate that? And is there dollars and cents associated with doing the right thing and providing the service that's necessary for that? Absolutely, a lot. So again, these are just two things that we discussed, but the list goes on and on and on. We have a class, and I know you didn't ask me this, but I have a class where we teach you how to negotiate and estimate mitigation projects. And we take you from beginning to end, and we connect the technical information with the dollars and cents for you.
Yeah, so you're kind of leading into exactly what my next question was going to be, or my next statement is, when most people get into the business, or they've been in the business a while, and then all of a sudden they're like, you know what, maybe I do need to learn a little bit more, right? The information is so... no pun intended. It's so dry. It's just boring, and it just puts people to sleep. And the majority of people that are there in class, these are, new entrepreneurs, new people that have just stepped into this space, and they're just trying to figure out, how can I be more effective? How can I turn a bigger profit? And that marriage just rarely happens. So, kind of leading into what you were explaining is, it seems like what you guys do is you're taking all of this great technical information, right, to be a phenomenal technician, but then you're also adding in the money component. Like, great, now you know what you're supposed to know, how you're supposed to operate, but here are the reasons why from a financial standpoint, and then also how to defend it. So can you dig a little bit deeper into that overall concept and what those classes look like? Absolutely.
So what we're focused on is helping you to go from, I think I know how to do some of this work, to exactly how to get paid for it. Because if you think you know how to do the work, kind of, and you turn those bills in, guess what? Insurers and the third-party contractors that they're using to analyze bills, they're getting better and better educated. They know that education makes a difference when it comes to negotiation. And so you should absolutely be the professional. You should be the expert in the room when you're going to make a phone call, or you're going head-to-head with someone else who's trying to negotiate on your bill or take some money off of that bill because they say something is not necessary. You should be the expert. I say you should be like a lawyer when it comes to the S500 standard and what needs to be done on that project. You should know that book better than anyone else in the room. And that's what we want to help you to do. And not only know what's there, but know how to apply it. And then know how to push that back into your organization so that what is supposed to be done is actually being done in the field when your guys are out there. And that's it's a holistic approach to education. It's not just, I know more than you do. It's about knowing what the right service is to provide, knowing how to charge for that, and how to be the best contractor in your area. And guess what? If you're doing it right, you're going to get paid a lot more than the guy that knows nothing. It's a tremendous difference. Right, exactly. And that's really where I think education is important. Education should be a tool, right? You're adding that. It's a resource that you now have. That applied to your business day to day, whether that's, speaking to the customer to educate them on why exactly it is that you have X amount of equipment in their home, or defending your overall estimate. Because again, when I have conversations with guys all the time, and they're like, man, I put down X amount of equipment, and then they're just, cutting it in half. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, how are you defending your
your estimate. Like, why is it that you have what you have in place to begin with, right? So I think that the approach that you guys take is really amazing. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of a deeper dive into some of your trainings. But first, we're just going to take a quick moment and thank our sponsors. Photo documentation is possibly one of the most important aspects of what it is that we do in the restoration business. Not only so that the client knows exactly what's going on, but also so that you can prove your work to insurance companies. One of the best ways that I found to go ahead and document our projects is by using Company Cam. Company Cam is an amazing app. It has so many features, everything from time-stamped and GPS located photos, individual project files, unlimited photo storage, in-app communication with your crew, a live stream of all of your projects as the photos are coming in, as if it was an Instagram feed. So from a managerial standpoint, Company Cam can help you there as well. But more importantly, it gives you the ability to protect your organization while documenting and keeping everything nice and neat. So we've got a really special offer for you. If you go to companycam.com/dominate, not only will you get your 14-day free trial, but you're also going to get the first 2 months 50% off. So again, head on over to companycam.com/dominate. Get the app, and I'm sure you're going to love it. All right, cool. So now that we're back, let's take a deeper dive into, because you're not just like a training facility. Like, you've got like a whole online suite, which, by the way, is super exciting, because I'm all about how you can take knowledge and put it online and, you know, have this kind of like an on-demand setting. So do me a quick favor, just run down all of the current offerings that you have, right from brick and mortar, physical location, to through all of your online suites, because it's quite a robust offering that you have.
Man, now you're putting the pressure on me. We've got so many products out there. So I'll tell you, our number one brick and mortar, you're sitting here in class with us, that's the WRT ASD combo, the IICRC certifications. We do that class. We run WRT classes, which you can watch online, do through Zoom. We have fire and smoke cleaning. We have AMRT, the mold remediation technician courses, also good for sewage remediation, trauma, crime scene cleanup, odor control, health and safety technician, our estimating and negotiating course, where we teach you how to estimate and negotiate for the mitigation losses that you're working on. Online, let's see, we have, the online training that we got started with was our water restoration technician. We just this year, 2022, dropped a brand new series into that, updating that course. It's 30 new segments in there, about 9 hours of training, but it's broken up into 15 to 30 minutes sections at the most. But that's in addition to over 200 videos that are already in there, where we really go in. You can go as far as you want in learning about water restoration. You can learn how to use Xactimate X1 online. It's the best way to learn it, by the way. It's self-led videos. Nick is on there, the green screen. He's standing in front of the computer screen, pointing to you exactly where you need to be, clicking the buttons. Nice. We have a mold remediation course online, all self-paced. A brand new program I hadn't even thought of mentioning. I talked about it earlier, but it's health and safety management system. And this is a little different from what we've done in the past, because it's not just the training, but what you do is you put each technician into the health and safety program, and it manages each individual. So in other words, you have to, as an example, you have to have a fit test, a respirator fit test for each technician once a year. Well, who remembers that? I mean, you got 20 technicians. Who keeps up with that? Maybe you have a system for it. Most people don't. Our system takes care of it for you. It teaches you, we teach you how to do the fit testing in-house, and then reminds you when, Fred needs to be fit tested again, so you can take care of that and bring him back into compliance. The respiratory training is there. So you get all the pieces that you need to make sure that you are up to date on those. And then we do that for each of those things. So not only are you helping your staff to work more safely and bringing safety in as a culture, but now if there's ever a problem, you have everything that OSHA is going to be asking you for, which is huge, right? It helps you from that perspective. Another thing it does is it can help you on your workman's comp insurance. When we talk about moving the needle, And another thing, as far as moving the needle is concerned, when you implement some of these safety practices, there are charges for those so that you get paid for doing the right thing. I think it's always a huge win when you get paid to do the right thing, because if you're not getting paid to do the right thing, you're paying to do the wrong thing.
Exactly.
That's bad.
Right.
That's bad, right? So I'm really excited about it because it's something that we've wanted for a long time. But now we have David Hodge with us on our team, and he really is an expert when it comes to safety. And we have developed this from the ground up to where it's a full system for you. So those are some of the things. I know I left things out, and some.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't even dive into the Reets TV and that whole series. I mean,
yeah, those online training products are part of the Reets TV series, but yeah, there's a ton of that. We have our own studio now because we do so much video work. We have a number of full-time editors and videographers, and now our own studio. So just jump in the studio and go.
It's a lot of content. Whole lot of content.
Yeah.
Right. And it's tedious stuff. People don't really appreciate how long it takes to, formulate a video, actually shoot the video, edit the video, and then, host it and put it out there. It's a lot of work. People are like, oh, you just got in front of the camera and press record. Yeah. There's a little bit more work that goes into it than just that, right?
Well, just like our last series, it produced 9 hours of finished content. And not including my time, and I wrote the entire thing myself, scripted the entire thing, 350 pages of scripting, and we logged 4,400 hours of editorial and videographer time on that. So you look at it and go, how is that possible? It just takes a long time to produce quality content.
Sure does. Give me an example from what you see in the business. What are some of the, kind of going back to estimating, what are some of the biggest mistakes that companies are making when it comes down to estimating and how they're formulating their overall estimates? Because that's a big conversation. I don't care the size of the company. It always boils down to the same questions like, hey, are you getting paid for this on your estimate? Did you not get paid for this on your estimate? How are you structuring everything? So give us some thoughts on, how to do things properly and maybe some of the mistakes that to avoid.
Yeah. So I think there's two, if we start from the beginner group, there's two mistakes there that I see people make. One is they go, well, it's an Xactimate, so I can charge for it, right? That's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. So yeah, okay, it's an Xactimate, so what? Did you need to do it? Otherwise, could we just randomly select stuff? No, it doesn't work that way. The second thing is just not understanding enough about what you're supposed to be doing on a project anyway. So you're doing things and you're going, I'm the expert. I make the decisions. No, you may be the expert. I don't know. I don't know what your level of education is, but you should never be the decision maker. So if you're out on projects and you're going, okay, I think I'd like to put in some air filtration devices here, and I think I'd like to rip out the cab, you're making decisions that you don't have a right to make. And when you start doing that, you're putting what I say is you're putting that money at risk. I'm not saying you're not going to get paid, but you are making a decision based on your opinion. And guess what? The customer has their opinion, and it may differ from yours. And the adjuster has an opinion, and his or her opinion may differ from yours. And then you're stuck on an island, right? You're by yourself. You've done the work. How are you going to get paid? So you really need to focus on being a good consultant. So a good consultant goes, here's the situation. You got these two options. I recommend we go this direction. What do you want to do? When you do that, just making that one change, it changes everything when it comes to getting paid, because now it wasn't my decision. Sometimes we're going to go to the customer. Sometimes we may even go to the adjuster, but primarily this is the property owner's decisions to make. It's their property. Whether it be a home or a business, doesn't matter. So, if you can just get that change made in your mind, that's huge. Then once we go beyond that first little step, what we want to start looking at is every line item that you use. I want to know every line item that you use, and we're going to categorize every line item into one of 4 buckets. And once we get that, we'll show you this bucket never gets paid for. This bucket rarely gets paid for. This one you got a pretty good shot at, and this one always gets paid for. So what do we want to do? We want to take and move your line items, or whether it be the justification or the reasoning behind why you're using these, we want to change that so that we get you into these always get paid buckets. What we're trying to do is not eliminate negotiation. We're trying to negotiate through the entire process. Don't leave it to the end. Negotiation shouldn't be a phone call with the adjuster once you send the estimate. Negotiation should start from the second you walk in the door of the loss, and it ends with you receiving the check. So really, we want you to front load negotiation. In other words, do most of the negotiation up front. So when you deliver the estimate, there's very few questions that should be asked, because you've done the you've had the communication that was needed, and where it was needed. And there should be very few questions. And if there are, you should know what they are before you send your estimate. If you don't know the questions that are going to be brought up before you send an estimate, you're not doing it right.
Right.
If you get surprised, you're just grasping at straws and you're losing money hand over fist. We can change all that.
Yeah, and I totally agree, because again, one of the things that I like talking about quite a bit about is obviously the sales portion of it. And typically when you're doing a sale of any kind, right, a presentation of any kind, you're box closing all the way through. In other words, you know that these are objections that are going to be coming up at some point, and throughout your presentation, you're addressing them and you're overcoming them. So that way the customer doesn't say, oh, well, hey, I have an objection, right? You kind of should have already covered it. And that's such an important aspect in closing deals. But then all of a sudden, when it comes down to negotiating your estimate, you know that there's going to be objections, but you just totally forgot about addressing them in the same way that you would have originally with your customer. Just because, again, it's just, I don't know, I think maybe it's an out of sight, out of mind type of deal. Nobody really knows who the desk adjuster is going to be. So they're like, I'll reach out when it, in a couple of weeks, whenever I need to go ahead and start hunting down my money. But that approach is very, very powerful, right? Just, hey, if you know what you're going to get objections on, and you know that it's something that should happen, let's start addressing it, right? Let's get the parties involved and see exactly where it is that they're, because again, whenever you go head on to the problem, it just changes the tone, right? It's the difference between you making a call to a customer and be like, hey, by the way, I'm running 15 minutes late, and you jumped the gun on it, as opposed to the customer calling you and saying, hey, you're late. Totally different conversation, same outcome.
Yeah.
Different conversation. Yep. So I definitely like that approach. Now let's talk about the online training. People go on to Reets TV and get the training. Like, how long do they have access to this? So like, say for example, like if I have a team, 5, 10, 15 guys, and obviously anything related to labor, especially in today's day and age with the workforce the way that it is, there's a little bit of a revolving door going on. Do they have access to say, hey, look, by the way, us as an organization, we've got this great training, let's catch you up to speed on this drying process? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. We recognize that. We recognize that, one, we're in an emergency service. So trying to schedule training is tough, because if a water loss comes in, we got to go. That's what we do. The second thing is you do have turnover. And really, this has always been true, but more than ever, the key to success in this industry right now is the ability to attract great people and get them up to speed, bring them to competency as quickly as possible. Yeah, could you bring a new tech to a competent tech in the course of 6 months or a year? Possibly, depending on how much work you have and how good a trainer you are. But you don't have that kind of time. You need to take this person and shorten that curve, shorten that time from new hire to competent. You have to bring that down. Now, there's two different ways you can do that. One is online training. It's just really easy because it's convenient, it's cost effective. I can send the guy out if a job comes in, but he can be training otherwise. But here's the thing about online training. It's fantastic if you give them the training and then give them the opportunity to use it in a short time span. So in other words, you can't send somebody through training and then send them off to do something else, or never give them the opportunity to use that information, because that's part of the learning process. Learn and then use. I'll give you an example. We've all looked at a YouTube video on how to repair something.
Right.
And so you watch that video and you're like, got it. You put it in your pocket and you go to do it. Don't got it. I'm missing stuff, right? So what do? You go right back to the video and you go play, step one. Okay, pause, do step one. That's what we do, right? So what you're recognizing there is that you have to learn and then do. Because if you follow that YouTube video and you do it once, guess what? The next time, much easier. You can do it a second time. It's not a problem. You do it 3 or 4 times, you got it. That's what you're trying to get your techs to do. You're trying to bring them from great person, got a great person here, really ideal for our culture, knows nothing about water restoration. I got to get them into being a competent technician very quickly. Online training might be the solution for you. If you don't feel like you can get them the training and then put them in a position to use it very quickly, then you need to send them to us. And what we do is we have classes where they learn and then they do over the course of a week. Everything you learn, then you do. And again, the purpose for that is to get you into a place where you very quickly, you're shortening that time from new to competent to a much shorter window. Now, when you can do that very well, there's plenty of work out there. I mean, you know that, Rico. There's plenty of work to be had if I have the right people to get it done.
Exactly. So one of the things that happens, and I think a lot of business owners in our space see this happen, is they send off their techs to get amazing training. And the techs know everything that needs to be done step by step. And for the first month, the first quarter, they do it. And then what ends up happening is you start missing very important steps, right? But and it could be something small. It could be like, you know what, we don't really need to set up containment this time. You know what, we don't have to do, whatever that scenario looks like. What's your advice for business owners, project managers, as far as a system to make sure that the small details aren't taken for granted and that they're being done consistently? So that way, because once you can have that consistency and it never changes, that's really where I believe businesses start to scale, right? But what's your advice? What would you say to, an owner or a business or a project manager on how to make sure that every single one of those small steps are taken every single time?
Yeah. And Rico, you're hitting on some amazing points here because, as an entrepreneur, and you're obviously an entrepreneur as well, it's very easy for us to go, just get the work, we'll figure out how to make money later, right? Just get it and let's do something because that feels awesome. But what we have to do is create a profitable and repeatable model that's as simple to operate as possible. So what you really want to do is put together what you're talking about, which is a system that helps walk people from training to execution to sustainability through, so that we get that level of service continuously. And if you're trying to go after, we're going to go after water, we're going to go after fire, we're going to go after mold, we're going to do reconstruction, we're going to do contents. I mean, that's kind of the path everybody wants to take in restoration. Guess what? That's 5 different companies. Right. If you haven't created the first good model, you're going to be putting out fires everywhere. And the problem is that's very costly. It pulls your hair out. How many guys are working 70, 80, 90 hours a week trying to run a business? That should never happen. I don't want to tell you how many hours a week I work. I've learned, and I work very, very few hours. But it's because we focused on get it super simple, create a model that is sustainable, that helps to sustain itself, that has checkpoints that are simple, and work the system, and then just stand back and tweak the system. Don't get in there and wreck the system. Tweak it, right? So for example, how do we make sure that we get that to happen? First of all, it starts with training. Bring the new technician in, get them training. We're going to get them to work with a lead tech. That's pretty standard. But then we have a system. They get a workbook, and it starts with gathering information about the project, doing the scopes, and so forth. Sounds a lot like what everybody else is doing. But then there's a review process that goes on every single project, and we have check sheets that we're going to go through, making sure, okay, if that line item was used, then this one also had to have been. Because, for example, if we moved furniture, we had to also block and tab. If it's not there, where is it? Right? Simple things like that. And you go, well, what block and tab? What is that, $40 a room? Well, do the math. $40 a room times 4 rooms on a job, $160 a job, times 100 jobs, that's $16,000. It adds up. right? That's one of those little line items that can just fly out the window. Nobody saw it, but we do that. The other thing is we have creative compensation programs that ensure that certain things that I call them profitable activities, certain things that if we do this every time, I know that we're making money because we did that. That's a more profitable path than another way of doing it. So we find these certain profitable activities that we want repeated over and over and over again, and then we compensate to that. So yeah, they've got base compensation, but they have opportunities for additional compensation by performing profitable activities. And it works great because now what's happened is everybody wants the same thing because everybody's getting paid for the same thing. I'm getting paid for doing that. Guess what? You're going to get paid for it too. And then we both want the same thing. It makes it very easy to replicate because it's not going, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you do that?
Right.
You're losing money, man. I'm here to help you. How much money do you want to make? That's what I want to know. And then I'm going to help you get there. I'm coaching you to make more money. That's what I'm doing. It's a totally different conversation than you must follow process A, B, and
right.
C. So, there's a lot that goes into it. I've done it wrong for a lot of years, and I'm probably still doing a lot of stuff wrong. I know I am. But I love where we're at right now. It works very, very
I love
well.
the idea of profitable activities, right? And they say that money isn't the biggest motivator for a lot of people on your staff, but heck, it definitely helps, right? Especially if it doesn't hurt. So
there's nobody asking for a pay decrease. I'll tell you that.
Right. So like, hey, I'm so passionate working here. Can I just, can you keep half my check? Like that never happens, right? So, can you give us some like real world example that you think restoration companies could use today with their staff and say, hey, look, these are profitable activities that you could potentially pursue?
Yeah, a very good question. I'll give you one that, see, now you're starting to get into my good stuff. All right.
Usually happens at 45 minutes. Yeah.
No. So again, compensation is I'll start by saying this. Compensation is such a sensitive subject because, as a business owner, I got to be careful that I don't overpay or pay for the wrong thing, And at the same time, if you come up to somebody and you go, guess what? Come up to one of your employees and say, guess what? I'm totally revamping your entire way you make money because you're going to make more money doing it. What? They're going to go, what? No, I don't like this. This is bad, right?
Right.
So you do have to be careful about how you make adjustments in compensation. And you have to build trust. So if you're going to do something, you got to get behind it. So you asked me for a specific example, and I'll give you one. We knew some years ago that we weren't always getting our air movers calculated on the job. Sometimes the guys would do it. Sometimes they would forget. I mean, that's just bottom line. Well, every time you forget, you're costing me a lot of money. So what we did is we went back and started randomly pulling invoices and sat there with the calculator and figured out how many air movers should have been used and how many actually were used. And we found that on average, we were missing air movers. There was opportunity there. So I started looking and I go, you know what? Hey, if I can share some of the profits with my staff, great. Right. And so we decided to start compensating our guys for setting air movers as one little piece of how they make money, not everything. Right. But one little piece. But then there was another piece, and that was drying time. So years ago, we used to do a lot of program work. Well, on program work, they wanted you to be done in 3 days, 3 or 4 days. And so you talk about these things that creep in. And it creeped in that we were not drying to the meters, but really more drying to the clock.
Right.
That had to stop. You'd see it come up. Well, we got to get it in. We got to turn it in because the requirements on the program are this. We haven't done program work in years because of that. Because it didn't work out for us. It may work for you, but it didn't work out for us. We did it for 25 years, and it got.
Is that so? Don't lose that train of thought. But this is one of those things does that tie into the absurd amount of hours at one point? So it was like more busy work than actual profit work.
That was part of it. The other part was just trying to do too many things. I say that the first 40 years of my life, I was trying to do everything. I wanted to do it to prove I could do it. Now I'm going, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to, instead of doing the things to show that I could do it, I'm going to do the things that I should do. Instead of proving something, I'm just going, no, I don't do that. This is the way I make a living. This is what we do, and I don't do that. Right. And so there's a lot of stuff that we had to just get rid of. We sold a company with a lot of the services that we provide because we didn't want to do it anymore. And we wanted to really focus in on one model, and that's what we've done, and it's been great. But going back to the compensation piece, one piece was not putting enough equipment in, the other was not drying long enough. So we said, I said, let's do something super simple, because compensation has to be simple. If it's complex and the person can't figure out how they make money through it, you might as well forget it. It's a waste. Like telling a technician, you're going to make 0.5% of the gross profit if our gross profit exceeds 65% over the.
You're done.
What am I supposed to? What? How do I make money? What do I do to change that? That doesn't make any sense, right? I just made stuff up, right? But they got to see, if I do this, then I get this. We all thrive on that, and so we said, look, for every air mover you place, you get $1 a day for every air mover that's set. And so it was just this, like, let's try it. It covers making sure we have the right number of air movers and making sure we're drying long enough. Now, there's more to it than that, because you say, well, now they just unload the truck.
Right, exactly.
Get in there. No. In order to qualify for that, you have to calculate the air mover usage, and then you have to be within that range, in the range of high to low. So what I got out of that is I was guaranteed every time to have the calculations done, and then be able to see, there's the calculations, there's how many we used, and I can see where we should have been. It simplified everything.
Right.
Now I don't have to go in and calculate and go, I hope we're getting the right number of air movers. They want to do it because they're getting paid for every one of those every single day. Right. And I tell them, I go, guys, these are like your employees. These air movers are your employees. Every one of them that's out there working, you get paid $1 a day for. And there's
also a hidden value there that, I mean, maybe you realize, I'm sure that you probably realize this, but what most people won't realize is that there's actually another layer of value in that system. Because now if you do have a tech who's not putting down the right amount of equipment, it's a much different conversation when it comes time to part ways, because the argument is very simple. If you don't care enough about yourself and the money that we are allowing you to make above and beyond everything else, you certainly don't care about the profits for the company. And it just makes it, the decision to part ways, so much easier, right? Because again, we're all human. We could totally forget. But if you've got this tech that you're like, man, I wonder if this person has potential to kind of go to the next level, and they're always on target, they're always doing their calculations, they're making sure they're maximizing the profits for themselves, you can have confidence in that guy or gal to also make profits for the company. But if the guy can't even do that one thing for themselves and their family, what are they going to do for your company, right? So I think that that's even though that shouldn't be the driving reason to do it, but it is a great little hidden KPI in that little system to use.
Yeah, and one other thing that we do, so that I don't ever have to have that conversation, because I don't have time for that, is we talked with the guys, because here's the problem that comes in with this system. Well, Fred and Tim, they got a new job. They started that new job. They set the equipment. Well, we got to go back and do a little more there tomorrow. Oh, but now we're sending these two guys back to that job. Oh, Fred and Tim got a new job. Well, guess what? They just had they got double opportunity to make bonus compensation, and I got nothing, right? So I got scammed by the scheduler. So we recognize that could be an issue. So what we talked with the guys, and they decided, pool all the money. So once a month, so they pool all, we pool all of that money, goes into one pot, and once a month it's distributed based on hours worked. So your percentage of the total hours is your percentage of the pot. So that way, everybody, it doesn't matter what job you get. If you go to monitor or you go out to start a new job, doesn't matter. You get the same amount. But guess what happens if somebody doesn't do their calculations? That money doesn't go into the pot. Right. So who gets hurt? I get hurt because you didn't do your job. Right. A lot of peer pressure in that. So the peer pressure to make sure that you do that is strong, because that's my money that you left off. So it really works well, and you'd think it'd become perhaps a point of conflict for the guys, but we found that it's the opposite, because and I know we haven't gotten into culture, and we probably don't have time to, but for me, company culture is huge. Having a positive company culture where people love to come to work every day is tough to create, but it's your job. That's your job as an owner or a principal, to create a great place where people want to work. If they don't, guess what? You're going to struggle.
Right.
You're really going to struggle if people don't like
Totally agree.
So
and we
anyway,
don't have, obviously a whole lot of time to do a deep dive on company culture, because that's an episode in and of itself. But if you had to give us the quick 5-minute rundown of what, in your opinion, provides good company culture, and what a lot of companies are not doing perhaps, or what they could be doing, that would be really amazing. Because I've been saying for a while now, and a lot of people are scratching their heads. They're like, man, I can't find good people. And the restoration industry, along with any kind of physical labor industry, is really getting hurt, right? Because again, our labor force, right? 18, 35, 40, you're being bombarded each and every single day with a laptop lifestyle. You've got all of these, a million and one ways to make, quote unquote, digital money, right? However that may be, either, selling on Amazon or in eBay or Etsy, it doesn't matter. There's all of these great things. And people sometimes are like, man, you know what? Maybe I don't want to go work for a company, right? So how do we combat that as an industry?
Well, the first thing I'd say is there a labor crisis? Yeah, there is. But if you're a great company, the people who want to work will come to work for you. So I guess one of the first rules that I have, that I've learned over the years, if somebody doesn't have a job, they don't have a job here. So I know that's harsh to say, but if you're not working in this economy, it's because you don't want to work. So I have to find people that are already employed, and I want to find people that are great people, right? So I want to find the right person. The second rule is we rarely hire people who have experience. And that's something we've done for as long as I've been a part of the company. We very rarely hire people because of what they know. We hire people because of who they are, because it's a whole lot easier for me to teach you how to do water damage restoration work than it is to teach you how to be a good person.
Right.
Guess if your mom couldn't do it in 18 years, I'm not going to be able to handle it either. So, I want to find people who are going to add to the culture that we have, and then I'll teach you how to do water restoration. Don't worry about that. The other, and not to go too far on that, but it's not that I don't want people that have previous experience, because we hire a few people, very small percentage, that already are in our industry, but they bring over whatever habits from the last place they worked at, right? And then if I'm trying to, I don't know. It's just not the way I like to do it, because if they're going to jump ship to come to me from in the same industry, they might do it again to me. So anyway, I just try to hire outside the industry, and I think that the water damage restoration industry is a great place to be. Our experience is we have not had a hard time finding people, and I think a lot of it is because of the culture that we have. People like to work here. We have very low turnover, and I would even go to say that it's extremely low turnover. What's the key to that? Simply put, I think you should genuinely like the people that work for you. You should genuinely care about the people that work for you. If you do, then they'll feel that and stay around. Now, I know some people go, oh, no. They are employees. You don't form a relationship with them. Okay, that's fine, but I bet your turnover rate's high. And I bet you're struggling with a negative reinforcement. In other words, you're trying to get things done by threats and demerits versus positive reinforcement. I find you're going to have a lot more success if you work as a coach, helping somebody to achieve what they want to achieve, versus you being taskmaster that forces people to do what you want them to do. And that's philosophy, right? But I believe it makes a huge difference in whether or not people stay with you, and whether or not you can find good employees to work within your organization. So that's the way we've done it. I don't know any other way to do it other than to be nice to people and take care of them as best as I can. But that's the kind of we operate. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, sure you do." Well, come on over. Our doors open 5 days a week, 8 to 5, I can give you our address, and you can ask them if they like working here and see what the answer is. But that's the kind of culture that you want. It's not necessarily that you're hanging out with the guys drinking beers.
It's actually a worse approach. Like if this is like something even for myself, like I learned that the hard way, right? Like there is this thing where you can be too close, right? But having, a little bit of that red velvet rope, okay, look, cause you're busy. And I finally came to the point, I was like, man, I have enough friends. Like, I don't need more friends. Like, that's not what this relationship is about. But I have noticed that having a vested interest in, sure, getting your job done so that your company can get paid. Yeah, of course, ultimately that's important. But also having a little bit of an interest in what their goals are, right? What their objectives are. Like, hey, like, what do you want to be doing in the next 5 years? And that's a tough question for a lot of people to answer, because they're like, I don't want to tell you that I don't want to be putting down fans. And I think that a good owner, right, a good entrepreneur who really cares about his people, you want to push past that and really get the real answer. Like, where is it that you really want to be in the next 5 years, even if it doesn't involve putting down fans, but let's figure out how putting down fans can be that stepping stone for you. And that takes a lot of growth for the entrepreneur, because sometimes you're going to lose some really good people for your company, but they're gaining a whole new future. And that, again, you want to talk about getting philosophical. Like, that's when you start getting really, really philosophical about how you manage people and what your overall goal should be. But really finding, people's hardship and, hey, why is it that you're here? Where is it that you want to go? What is it that you can offer to them that they couldn't get anywhere else? And make them feel like, hey, I'm a human being and I'm being taken care of. And now I've got a support system built into my organization. I'm getting a check every Friday, but then I get all of this added value. I'm learning more. I'm learning about, and I've had some great conversations with some entrepreneurs that they really go down this road, like helping their employees fix their credit, doing workshops on how to manage money, how to make investments. And I'm not talking about like the same, run of the mill, hey, we offer you a 401k. We're talking about like really taking deep dives with these people. And I'm like, wow. And they have like almost zero turnover. I mean, of course, there's no such thing as zero, but zero turnover. I mean, amazing organizations. And when you ask why, it's not the money that they're getting paid, right? The employee, it's not necessarily that. It's all of this other stuff that where they're like, hey, I'm coming, they're leaving their home to go to like their second home, which again, you spend so much time with your crew, 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, 10 hours a day sometimes, that you need to have that environment. So I think that that's a really great approach. It's unfortunate that, there's a couple limitations. Number one, the ownership limitation, where they just haven't evolved enough to be there yet, or the monetary limitation, where the company's not making enough money to fully support all of those great things that they could potentially do for their employees and their team.
Oh, you're right. And that is my responsibility as an owner. My responsibility as an owner is to create an organization that makes enough money to make us all do well, makes it possible for all of us to reach our objectives. If I can't do that, there's your focus right there. And it can be a challenge, but ultimately, I would say our organization is like the goose that lays the golden egg. We all work for her. We all work to care for her, whether your job is to feed her or to put her up at night or to make sure she's not getting sick or collect the eggs or whatever the case may be. We all have to do what we got to do to care for that goose. And if she's healthy, guess what? We all do well. It's my job to make sure that everybody's doing their job to care for the goose. And I know that's kind of a crazy analogy, but if we don't, she dies, the eggs are gone, and all of us lose, right? So it's my job to make sure that everything is being done to care for this organization and make it healthy and make it profitable so that we all get a share of the profits. And I've been on both sides of that. I've been in a situation where our company was not making enough money to pay what we wanted to pay. And we're not in that situation now, but it is tough. You got to get yourself, I know we say it's not about the money, but it's all about the money.
I'm so glad when people actually say that, because I think I'm like one of the loudest people in our industry that always is pushing the money, like, and putting it on the forefront, because let's call it what it is. Like, the world, like, that's it. You're doing whatever it is that you're doing for a living. It's because it's making enough money to support the kind of life that you want, So it's important. Well, it's not everything, but it certainly is important.
Look it up. A business's definition is to essentially generate profit. It should be like a printer that prints dollar bills. If there's no dollar bills coming out the other end of the printer, then it's
broken, right?
And so if your business is not making any money, you're broke. Right. And you got to go get a job somewhere. It's the worst hobby in the world. I mean, it just really is. And so I look at it this way. I got 2 sons, a wife, and I've taken time away from them and dedicated it to making a living. And if I'm not making a living, I'm not doing my job. So this time is all about making a living so that I have time to go do other things. And again, another subject, work-life balance. But this is here for a reason, and that's to make a living. And so it should be our focus.
Absolutely. So
not that it's not. Yeah, not that it's that we shouldn't do nice things for other people. Not at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You better make a living while you're doing it.
Exactly right. Right. So it's again having the candid. Well, money is a taboo issue for a lot of people. It really, really is. Even if you're a successful business owner, for a lot, it's a taboo issue. People don't really want to talk about, how they're doing it, how much they're making. Sometimes it's perceived as gloating or whatever the case may be. But people need to get comfortable with it, right? And what they do, which I think is a little funny, is like, oh, why is it that you do what you do? Oh, it's because I just find so much joy in what it is. Then stop charging for it. It's like immediately, it's like, no, I can't do that. Okay, cool. So you are making money at it. And then it also has the added effect of you feel really good while you're doing it. Like that should be the conversation, right? Because if money went away tomorrow, you wouldn't be doing it, right? So something that I typically ask all of my entrepreneur friends, top book recommendations. Do you have a top 3 that you think every entrepreneur should read?
Well, I've got a book that I'm reading right now, but it's probably not a book you should read. Make it stick. The Science of Successful Learning. Nice. I don't think that's what you want to read right now.
And they're probably all about drawing. No, just kidding.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I should be able to give you a better answer than that. But what I've been reading lately is not stuff that you probably want to read. I mean, it's all about, I read so much about why what we're doing in the training industry and in the education industry right now is probably not beneficial. And the other problem is I kind of happy doing what I feel like I've gotten to where I want to be.
Is there like any one book that like massively, impact your life?
Well, I won't say it massively impacted my life, but and this is such a cheesy book, but honestly, I really liked the E-Myth book. I thought it was really good, and I mean that's
great.
That's so corny.
Yeah. Well, no, why is that? So why is it corny? Just because it's been mentioned so much?
I read that thing probably 15, 20 years ago, but it's still, and I really, I shouldn't say this, but I really don't. The guy's not a very nice guy. But it's a good book. It's a good book. I mean, it really helps you to figure it out. Another one is The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. I think that's a great book to read. There's anything from Patrick Lencioni, I think is how you say his name. I love all of those books that he. There's one about conflict within an organization that's fantastic, but really, I mean, like he's got a whole set of books, and it's been a number of years since I've read them, so not all the titles are coming to mind, but look them up.
Definitely will. So what I'll do is actually, if you guys are interested in any one of those titles that he just mentioned, I'll go ahead and I'll provide a link in the show notes as well as in the video description below. Jeremy, so we got to go. We got to run because you've been on here for a while. So if somebody wants to go ahead and get in contact with you, is there a social media channel that's best and website if they want to go ahead and take a look at the training and all of that stuff? Where do they go?
Right here, ReetsDryingAcademy.com. Reets Drying Academy on social media. I used to do more on like Facebook and stuff, but I will tell you our staff is on there all the time. So look up Reets Drying Academy, Meredith Truitt and Rebecca Balin and Nick Sharp and David Hodge. Those guys are on there all the time. A personal decision, I just don't do a lot of that stuff. And I know I probably should, but I don't feel like it.
You know what? There's a lot of reasons not to be on social media, and that one is as good as any of them. So, Jeremy, thank you so much, brother, for jumping on the show today and sharing all of your knowledge. And Restoration Nation, make sure that you go ahead and click the link below. Check out Reets Drying Academy. Check out their online offerings. I mean, just a great organization. And just based on the conversation here alone today, I mean, I wish I would have gone through Reets Drying Academy when I first started the business. I think that this would have been really, really useful. So make sure that you check out your boy, Jeremy, and we will check you out on the next one.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, interviewing the restoration business's top industry insiders, the movers and shakers, the hustlers and hackers. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. Hook up with us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Restoration Domination to catch video interviews, highlights, and behind-the-scenes content. And follow your host at Rico Garcia Jr. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, dominate.